What?
Who you with?
And Eric, we're here.
Who you
We're doing
with?
the thing.
Who you with?
Go live.
Who
What
you
happened?
with?
Okay, I got you.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
Time
That's
to
right.
click it, share it, love it.
You know what I'm
You know how we
saying?
do.
If I'm on here, so I'm on my phone right now. I'm looking down at my phone. You know what I'm saying? Because as soon as I see it pop up, I'm gonna hit share on this bad boy, which I would highly advise somebody else. You know, I mean, man, why not? You know, why not hit
Why
share?
not?
Boom, there it is.
Sharing is
Boom,
caring.
look at that. Look at
Look
that.
at
I
that.
just shared it just like that, man. Just
Now
like
we're in
that.
it.
That easy. It didn't cost me nothing to hit
Yo,
share. Didn't
RJ in
cost
the
me
house.
nothing to hit share, man. Oh, what's up with that knucklehead?
The boys are
What
back.
are you doing, man? Uh,
Correction, man.
nice, nice.
Nice to have
Hey,
you
if you
on
just
live.
tuning in, I am Kirk M. Samuels, baby,
And I am Jason B. Kendrick.
and we are the Madmen of Masculinity.
That's right. We're just real men having real conversations for you. And
For
tonight
you, I gotta find where
we're
the
going deep.
camera
Why
is.
why why you be
I
trying
gotta
to poke
find
me in
where the
my eye?
camera
What's
is.
that about?
It's all good. Doink. Hey, man, you know, we're gonna hit you with the quick version tonight, folks. Ladies, I'm like a
Deep.
talk show host. I got my piece of paper. We're gonna hit you with the quick
We're gonna
version
condense
tonight,
this
folks.
down.
Yeah, we're gonna hit you with the quick
Go
version
deep.
tonight, folks. We got a pretty good one though, man. We got a pretty good one. I like. Let me fix my camera, man. Why am I so like
Why
down
you
low in the screen, man? What's
looking
up
up
with
your
that?
nose?
I know, man. I don't want you to see what I got up in there, man. I don't want you to see what I'm thinking. No way, man. Hey, we got a good one though, man. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we circle back on our conversation on KLDC
Yes, sir.
12:20 a.m. Mile
In the
High
mile
City,
high.
Saturday mornings at 8 a.m.,
Mm-hmm.
Wednesdays at 6 p.m. KLDC 12:20 a.m. in the Mile High. You know what I'm saying? We doing
Yes,
it over the
sir.
air, man. We on the
That's
FCC
Madman Radio
Airways,
for
man.
reals.
FCC Airways, man. You know what I'm saying? And the top of the rock. But
Yep. So what are we talking
yeah,
about?
man. So man, we circling back on this bad boy. We just following up from Father's Day. You know, we just had Father's Day
Mm-hmm.
not too long ago. It was a couple weekends ago, and you know, Father's Day can stir up a lot of things for a lot of
Yes.
people, a lot of memories, a lot of good and bad. You know, I would say probably 51 out of 100 may have maybe some negative feelings that might come up from experiences, but either way. And so along that line, man, you know, we thought we would explore the whole idea of father wounds.
Yes. Yeah, we've discussed it a bit before, but I think with our ever increasing maturity and wisdom, we are going to go a little deeper, with a
Yeah.
little more expansion on that topic, and we will do our best to condense it down because that's something we could probably talk about for days and days. So 30 minutes
Yeah.
ain't a long time.
No, not at all, man. Not at all. And so, you know, man, let's just jump straight into the
Let's
deep
jump
end, man.
into
What do you
it.
think?
Let's do it.
By the way,
That's why we do it.
if you go to the Facebook page for Mad Men and Masculinity, and you know, if you type a comment there, we can see it here live,
Just like this.
and just like that, you know, that guy has a pretty familiar name. That would be my son, RJ Samuels, walking his dog Yola down some desert lonely highway. But if you go to it's like the opening of the Eagle song. Hey, if you
Right.
go to Mad Men and Masculinity, man, you type a comment there, we can see it right here on the screen, and we'll make you famous.
Yes, sir.
We'll put it right up here. But
So
so
speaking of the father wound,
yeah,
in response to Father's Day being not too long ago, which I mean, there's so many ways we can go with this. I think talking about the four kind of cues to unhealthy relationships with fathers, or what
yeah.
can lead to father's wounds, and I mean, what we've come up with, probably about only 10% of men have a healthy, loving relationship with their father.
Yeah, I think so, man. I think most men have one of four father wounds. Either he was absent from the home, he was absent in the home, he was abusive, or he set such a high bar that the son could not actually please him or make him proud or make him happy. And so I think, you know, by far, way more than 51 out of 100 men can relate to one of those in terms of a father experience that they've had in their life. And so, you know, I mean, again, straight into the deep end, man. You know, personal experience. You know, my dad, you know, he got drafted to go to Vietnam at 17. It was either that or go to prison. He went to Vietnam. You know, got disabled there in Vietnam. Spent his 18th birthday in Vietnam. Um, you know, he came back 100% disabled, but he also came back with a raging drug and alcohol addiction.
Mhm.
Um, and he did some bad things. Turns out I found out I have two older siblings um, that I just met over the last few years. He did some bad things and he got incarcerated, but kind of because of his because of PTSD and everything else, they didn't send him to prison. They sent him to a mental hospital. So I grew up
Oh,
with him in and out of a mental hospital my whole life. When he was home, there was abuse of almost every kind, and when he wasn't home, we would visit him on the weekends at a mental hospital. So, I had probably multiple of those, one of those four kind of father wounds. But that's my deep end experience.
yeah. I mean, for me, it was in some ways I can be kind of envious for guys like you who had a obvious trauma and obvious reasons to have a father wound. For mine, it was just neglect, and it was not out of malice or spite. My father was, his father passed. Well, I guess my grandfather passed when he was 5 years old in a drunk driving accident, and so he was raised by his single mother and two older sisters, and of course, mom worked. So his teenage sisters who probably didn't want to be acting like mom anyway had to raise him. So he spent a lot of his time wishing he had just been born a girl so he could fit in. He became very rebellious, joined the army. They had me around, he was 23. And so he just assumed because he didn't have a father really in his life when he was growing up, he didn't really know how. So he just adopted a lot of the kind of social norms of, suck it up, John Wayne isms. He used a lot of his kind of what he learned in the military about with me. And so for me, that was normal though. I didn't think anything of it. And it wasn't until I got older I started realizing I was struggling in relationships. I was having some issues in life, and wasn't until getting into some counseling and coaching and personal development that was like, oh wait, okay, there's actually some issues that I need to address here that I wasn't even really aware of because neglect is one of those things where they're most of your parents work, so they may not be around all the time, so you're kind of left on your own, and so you just develop these coping mechanisms, and they're helpful when you're young, but they're not helpful when you get older, especially you want to have a family and relationships and things like that moving forward. So it was something that I had to come to terms with and then really work on. And I think the biggest help really is getting around other guys like this guy and talking about it because the more we talk about those things, the more of that emotion, that pent up emotion and old trauma we get out. And so, the a memory without the emotional attachment is wisdom, and that's what we're working towards is wisdom about the father wounds that we all may have, and wisdom to move forward to help the younger generation and to not have the same experience.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, and we have different experiences, but yet at the same time, there's some thread of commonality in that. And I think, by far, if men got into circles or either into connection with other men and begin to share our stories, we probably find out we got a lot more similarities than differences in terms of our experience. And like I said, I mean, I'm sure there are some men out there who had the absolute quintessential perfect experience with one father figure in their entire life, and they don't have any reference to a father wound. But you'd pretty much be a unicorn that eats fruity pebbles if that's the case. Because I don't really, I'm not sure. Maybe I could think of one or two guys that might have that story, but by far not. And
Yeah,
so,
I think
that's so common in terms of us men.
Yeah, I think a lot of men or don't even realize that they have a father wound because they haven't explored that. That's just how they grew up. And so when
Yeah.
we talk to them, unless they've had some personal development or done some counseling or anything like that, they may not even be aware that there's actually a father wound that they need to address and something they
Yeah.
look at. We just
Mhm.
accept, well, that's just how he is, so that's just the way it is.
Yeah. And a lot of times because we're guys, a lot of times we'll stuff things. So a lot of
Hmm.
times we will, as a coping mechanism, we cover up the wound, um, as opposed to healing the wound. And so a lot of times we stuff it, and a lot of times, we think that that's us dealing with the wound. And in actuality, the wound is still there, and the wound is still bleeding.
Yeah.
Um, and I like to say, a scar is completely different than a wound. When you have a wound, you end up bleeding all over people that didn't cut you.
Yeah.
And so the goal is to get healed from um, whatever wounds we have the best that we can actively, even if it leaves a scar behind, but something that we don't end up just kind of overlooking or throwing a bandage on it or just looking away and pretending it's not there. We got to deal with these things.
Yeah, and if you're wondering if maybe you haven't had this experience or you haven't delved in and dug deep into your own back garden to wonder, "Well, do I have a father wound?" Well, if you have some struggles in life, whether it's relationships or financially or just in coping with
Yeah.
life in general, maybe something to look at because we
Mhm.
tend to model what we were given. And so if it wasn't necessarily the most healthy modeling and lessons that we received, then we may not be even aware that we have an issue. And
Mhm.
really, getting into the 12 steps awareness is the first step. Hi, my name's Jason. I have a father wound.
Yeah.
This is my
Yeah.
issue. And that gets you starting down the road to healing.
Yeah. And what because what happens is if you don't deal with that thing, if you don't heal it, then to me that's the origin of a generational curse. And
Yeah.
then you end up passing that down from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next, because nobody anywhere in that line, in that lineage, stopped, got a hold of it, and dealt with it. I mean, I look back at my father's story, and man, I mean, he went through a lot of stuff, with his mother and father, his origin story. And so, but he never actually, quite honestly, I don't think he ever actually had an opportunity
Mhm.
to deal with that thing. So I think it's incumbent upon us in this current generation, to do that so we don't bleed all over our kids through that wound. So we don't bleed all over the significant other in our life. So we don't get in a dating space trying to overcompensate for something and end up wounding other people are hurting other people, hurting women and those kind of things. But even that to that point, I think even in the dating and relationship space, it's a great um it's a great thing for a woman to have in mind of, what most men are doing, manhood, father, all these kind of things, and we husband, and we don't know what these things are. So most of us is
Yeah.
trial and error at this point. That's not your fault, but at the same time, that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah, it's actually a good point to if you're dating a man or you're attracted to a man, maybe find out if he knows about his father wound or if he's dealt with it or if he's on the path to healing, if he's a part of a men's group or part of has healthy masculine influences around him. Because if not, then he's probably just parroting and rehashing the same
Mhm,
example he was giving.
mhm,
And maybe you get lucky and that example fits your example, and so you guys can just move on happy go lucky.
mhm,
But if not, then maybe if you want to have a healthy relationship, something you can grow and build on, then that's something to look at. Like, okay, well,
mhm,
is he aware of it? It's kind of this like my favorite first date question, like how aware are you of your traumas and what are you doing to
mhm,
correct those before you put that stuff on me? These are
mhm,
this go and it goes both ways. I mean, to we had Nikki Nicole, super producer, ask us a very poignant question last night, and I think it after much thought on it, I think a father wound, it may be called daddy issues on the female side, but it's still a father wound. It's the
mhm,
same thing. We talk about father wounds on the masculine side because that's where we come from. But I think
mhm,
if we were talking daddy issues and all these things, it's the same thing. It's just a different
mhm.
term for the same
Yeah.
effect.
Man, I think is profound. The what you just said in terms of he'll end up parroting those things that he was told or taught through his upbringing or through his childhood experience if he doesn't deal with those things. So that'd be a great question, a great first, second, third day question. For to add to pose to a man. You know, do you have any, what was your experience like with your father? And again, specifically, absent from the home, absent in the home, abusive, or says such a high bar that the son couldn't make him proud. I mean, but to ask him that, because to your point, yeah, I mean, you might end up seeing those things. If he says, "Oh yeah, well, I never knew my dad and this and that," or "Oh, my dad was a drunk and he was a this and that," have you dealt with it? And so what
Yeah,
does that look like in your adult? Have you dealt with that? If not, he's probably gonna, you may begin to see some of those things. So that stuff is huge to deal with and to
yeah,
bring out.
yeah. I mean, we talked to. I mean, we were when we were doing the turn your light on thing, or we are talking about to the ladies about asking the men if you're dating them, what was their relationship like to their father, and men asking ladies, what was your relationship like to your father and or your mother. So these are things if we can aren't in the process of looking at and healing and changing that story and that dynamic from our childhood, we're just going to repeat it. Which may
Yeah,
mean maybe it fits your paradigm and you guys can go on just fine. However, if you want to
yeah,
change it and not repeat and pass this down to your kids and your grandkids and so on and so forth, it's something to look at. It's
yeah,
something to be aware of. And I think a lot of times, especially in relationships when we're unaware of it, a lot of the trouble and trauma and the issues we have is because we have these undealt with wounds, and we're not aware of them, and so we're just bleeding on our partner or expecting them to fix something that we're not aware of, and then expecting our partner to fix it. Like
Yeah.
what, what kind of logic does that make? They don't even know that we have this wound. We may not even know
Mhm.
we have this wound, and so being
Yeah.
very aware of what your childhood taught you, what experiences you had that will bring may challenge your relationships, and how are you going to heal that and work on that, because I think two people in growth working together can create a
Mhm.
hugely strong foundation and really grow and
Mhm.
build something wonderful.
Mhm.
However, if you're ignorant and unaware, then you
Yeah.
may just be beating your head against the wall because you're not sure what to fix or what to work on.
Now, I think in terms of healing, and that's a nice bunny trail right there because I think healing a father wound happens in the presence of healthy or relatively healthy men. Like
Yep.
I think those I think certain kind of things happen in the space of masculinity. I don't know that you can heal certain wounds, particularly father wounds, absent the presence of masculinity, and ideally, healthy masculinity or the healthiest as possible in relationship with other men, and more specifically in circles of other men. So I
Yep.
think when we try to do it on our own, now I think one thing that we can't necessarily get, um, I mean, I guess, I mean, if you're heterosexual, one thing you can't get from masculinity is that deep level of intimacy with the
Right.
feminine. So I think femininity can come into play in terms of um, kind of like the graduate level work of
Right.
masculinity, or healing that father wound, but the bachelor's level work, that 4 year degree level work is, I
Yep.
think that's done in the presence of other men.
Yeah, you definitely have to get around other men and tell your story, because like I said earlier, the speaking out, the reason we need to have these circles of men is you get to share your story and speak out what your experience was, and then find out that because these other men are with you, that number one, you're not alone and you're not broken. They've had similar experiences. They may be different, but they have a similar experience and similar background. So you're
Yeah.
you're not broken. You're not alone. And then by talking it out, the more you speak about these emotional memories, these traumas,
Hmm.
the more
Hmm.
time you talk about it, especially in a safe space with other men, then you
Yeah.
take off a lot of that emotion, and that memory without
Mhm.
the emotional trigger is wisdom, and that's how we
Yeah.
can deflate and heal the traumas from our past in a circle of healthy men. I mean,
Yeah.
doing it in a not in a circle of healthy men may not go as well as you think, so make sure
Yeah.
you pick the right circle.
What's funny is that we can have these same conversations 2 days back to back and they be different.
They're
I
different.
think that's kind of cool. Matter of fact, so Nikki says if I ask the guys out when I would things like that on the first date, they bounce faster than a Super Ball. I say
So
that's a good
maybe not
sign.
the first date.
I'd say, I mean, first of all, yeah, sit down. Hey, how you doing? I'm Nikki. I'm Chet or whatever his name is. I don't know. And then you start going into father wounds. You might want to pump the brakes. You might want to, ease your way into that. But at some point, ideally, like I said, first, second, third date, you get into some deeper level conversations. That's something that I think you want to find out sooner rather than later.
Yep.
At least tiptoe around it. And if he does bounce, if that scares him, bye, Felicia.
Yep.
I mean, bye,
You're
Philip,
not trying to bring
whatever the
friends here.
opposite of
You're
Felicia
looking
is.
for a partner. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if he bounces like that quick because he's scared to go there, then then you're going to end up getting bled on for a wound that you
Mm,
didn't make. And so I think that's a good sign if he does bounce.
yeah.
When you get to the point of having those deeper level conversations. And so,
Oh, Fred's got a good point here.
what does he say?
Those are the guys you want to stay away from. A man who has come to terms with such scars would be willing to answer those if they felt you were
No,
asking sincerely. See,
exactly.
there's another. I think he was answering Nikki's directly.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. And I think that's right. I think a guy that has done the work and a
Mhm.
guy that is secure, now I do believe that you want a guy that has some of these experiences. If I'm a lady, I want a guy that has some of these experiences but has done the work. I want a guy who's been in battle. I say it all the time, knight in shining armor has never been in battle, right? So
Yep.
I want a guy who's got some dirt, who's been in some trenches but has done the work to do that. So if he decides to run immediately, then man, he's not even willing to look in the mirror.
Yeah.
And if he's not willing to look
Well,
in the mirror, the last thing you want to do is be all up in that nowhere.
yeah. Well, and to that point too, if you ask him a question like that and it triggers him, he's obviously not doing the work. So
Mhm. Mhm.
run and allow him to run, and maybe you've done him a favor and planted a seed, and that'll send him down
Mhm.
the path of, oh, there's something I need to look at because it's affecting
Mhm.
my relationships. But it's such a common thing nowadays that I think if men aren't aware of it, they should probably look at it because
Yeah.
and it's just the way of the world now that we're all traumatized in some way or form, and so there can be trauma bonding. So be careful of that. But if
Mhm.
you can talk succinctly and with brevity about these are my traumas and this is what I dealt with, and now I have a wisdom and awareness about my past that I can change for the future and bring some
Mhm.
love and light to that. It's like when we
Yeah.
talk about our fathers now, there's a lot more wisdom and acceptance and love
Mhm.
towards those men that we didn't have before because
Mhm.
we hadn't done the work, we
Yeah.
hadn't looked at it and processed it in a wise older mind frame. When we
Mhm.
were teens and 20s, dad was either the best or the worst, and then we got to a point where we're like, you know what, he's just a dude.
Mhm.
Maybe he just had struggles, and there's maybe I need to look at that and finding out who my father was, or finding out
Yeah.
these histories on them can help you really get to a different level of love and acceptance, even if it was a
Yeah.
traumatic childhood with him.
Mhm. I mean, man, Frederico, man, he's spitting the knowledge
He's
today,
dropping
man. You want
bombs.
gonna, you know what I'm saying?
You
You don't
don't
want to go into
you don't
combat
go
with
into
untested
combat.
equipment. Man, I totally agree. You are spitting dimes today, man. You got more dimes than a penny
Slot
arcade, man.
machine.
I don't know. I don't know what else has dimes, but anyhow,
Used
man,
to be
yeah,
the
that's
jukebox on roll
good. That's
now.
good, good stuff. And I think this next generation, man, I think,
Mhm,
I think they have, these deeper level wounds and they don't know how to deal with them. They don't know how to process them. They're having the whole world kind of thrown at them. And I think it's manifesting in anger and in rage and in
mhm.
lashing out. And we're seeing, this young generation of lone boys, acting out in mass violence. And so these things are just, I mean, right now it's taking a really bad turn. We had these father wounds, but
Mhm.
we didn't go into places with 15 round magazines and just looking for mass casualties. That's not something that we did. So I mean, I think this next generation, man, I think it, thanks, Debbie. I agree. I think this next generation needs to hear our stories.
Yeah,
My son RJ was the first one to comment there. I don't know if he's still watching, but I try to share, especially more lately as he's stepping into manhood, share some of my stories, man. And like, hey, man, here's what I went through, man. And at least I can offer you my presence, even with my scars from the wounds that I had. But I think this next generation does need to hear these things.
yeah, they definitely need a healthy masculine presence, and I think that may be why there's so much acting out because they don't have an awareness, they haven't been taught, or they haven't even seen. Maybe they don't have their father's not allowed to be in the home, or their parents are divorced or whatnot. There's so much divorce and division between mothers and fathers with kids nowadays that they may just not have that experience, so they don't know how to handle trauma. They
Yeah.
don't know how to handle bullying or getting into a fight. They don't know how to handle these harder things that they may have learned by watching their father and may have learned by talking to him. And
Mhm.
so it's really become incumbent upon us as the men to either lead by example or to step into these young men's lives to help be that sort of healthy masculinity for them,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they may not have had that, and this is the only way they know how to you know act out, or the only way they know how to cope is by acting out that way.
Yeah, and I would say, if there's a single mom out there with sons who don't have a man in their life, do your best to get him around, healthy groups of men. Whether that's, men's groups, men's organizations, men's ministries, whatever that looks like. But get them around there. Hey, before we, man, I want to finish. I want to do something we did yesterday before
Sure.
we get off of here. And first and foremost, we don't want to leave without saying that no matter what your father wound looks like, that doesn't give you an excuse not to do the work to become
Yeah.
the better man, and it doesn't give you the out or the excuse to just wallow with the wound. You are empowered to take ownership and to do the work and get the healing. But something that we did yesterday, man, if you could have a conversation with your father, a 90-second conversation with your father right now, what would you say to him, or what would that conversation look like briefly?
I would need a whole lot more than 90 seconds, I guarantee
Well,
you
yeah.
that, but if that's all I had, it would be that, I understand much more than I did. I'm much more grateful and thankful for his influence in my life, and, probably would apologize and, for my young ignorance and anger and animosity, and then, tell him, like, I think what you said yesterday was great. Like, I forgive you for the mistakes you made, and I
Man, don't
understand
take my
now.
thunder, man.
It was such a good thing I had to say it, 'cause I felt bad yesterday, I didn't even say that. So,
Yeah, I
my
think
bad.
no, I think for sure on my side, I would first and foremost forgive him. Had I been through what he went through, I might have turned out a lot like him. I would
Yep.
forgive him. I think fathers get a whole lot less grace than moms, generally speaking. So I would forgive him. But then and then I would also try my best to understand him. I would try my best to sit down and listen to him and hear his story, man. We don't hear father stories a whole lot. A lot of times the story we get is secondhand, maybe even from mom who had a bad experience with dad. And as a man, I have a certain level of awareness now that I did not have when I was a little kid. So I would A, forgive him, and B, want to hear his story directly and try to
Yep.
understand him. I wish, I mean, a couple of my kids never got my side of the story. So
Yep.
so that relationship looks different than a couple of my other kids. So
So on that point, if your dad's still alive and you have some kind of relationship with him and you want to get to know him and create a healthier relationship where you can see him as a person and understand him better, do that, make that phone call, reach out and talk to him man to man. Because
yeah,
once you're out of the house, once you're 18, you can't, you can still play the victim, but it's gonna do you no good. It's time for you to
yeah.
man up and take responsibility and take your power back and say, okay, this was my experience. It's up to me now to heal it, and then to glean the wisdom and the power and the strength from those experiences, and then turn those into superpowers, turn those into strengths, so you can move forward, help
Mhm,
your family, help yourself, help the next
mhm,
generation in the world by being a better example of healthy masculinity and a healthy man that maybe
mhm,
you didn't get.
mhm. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain, and I'm going to ask you to bring your
What? Why you always gonna be the
bring your
captain?
seats to the upright position, and tray tables to upright and lock position as we come in for landing. My co-pilot has a little attitude, but that's all right. We'll drop him off on the
Give me the
layover
stick.
and get rid of him. We're going to be coming in on runway 23 left, and your luggage, your baggage is going to be on carousel 3.
Just leave that luggage
Uh,
behind. You don't need that
leave that
baggage
luggage
anymore.
behind. You don't need any of that, man. What's your challenge? What's your takeaway from the day, man?
Um, Look at yourself, get in your dirt, dig in there, find out, what your father wound is, if you have a father wound, or if you have other trauma that you need to heal. Maybe you have a mother wound, maybe you have uncles, or maybe you didn't have any parents at all and you've got the orphan wound. But
Mhm.
it's incumbent upon you as the adult now to improve that, to heal that, and to turn that into a strength. Because if you're
Yeah,
playing the victim role, you're giving your power away to something you can do nothing about because it's in the past. So you need to heal that,
yeah,
move forward. What about you, sir?
yeah. Man, I think forgive your father. Forgive your father for, for his story and for his what you saw of him anyway. Forgive him. And if you ever get to a good place where you're stable and and you can hold some level of space, get his side of the story. Ask him about his upbringing. I mean, all those kinds of things. If it's safe. I mean, obviously, if it's an unsafe situation, I wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah,
But
you would
first
know
and
best.
foremost, forgive and forgive yourself if you're a dad. If you're a man, if you maybe created some father wounds in some kids, forgive yourself and dig into your understanding and do the work and do the healing. And I challenge everyone Saturdays at 8 a.m., 12:20 a.m. in Mile High City, Denver, Colorado, KLDC. It's the longer version of these conversations, so we go a little
Yep.
bit more in depth. And I challenge you
And
Wednesdays at 6 p.m. And
is the
you know,
replay. And if you like behind the scenes work, or you want to get either even extra long version, go on YouTube, and
yeah.
we are recording both on air
Mhm.
and on YouTube, so you get to see behind the scenes before Nikki Nicole, super producer, will edit it and make us look pretty and sound good, because you know how we are. We're just
Absolutely.
raw and uncut.
Yeah. It costs you absolutely nothing to hit like and share and
Yeah.
subscribe and all those kind of things, but it sure does help us out a whole lot. And so
Yeah.
hook us up,
And
holler at
if
your
you wanna listen to
boys.
it online, if you
Boom.
don't have a radio, you don't know what a radio is anymore, and you
Yeah.
just know how to stream, KLDC1220.com.
If you're on the golf course, pull up the website and listen to us live. Boom.
That's right.
Otherwise, good stuff, man. I appreciate you, JBK.
Appreciate you. I'm happy to see you again. It's been a long
No doubt.
time. I hope to see you again soon.
Will
We
do.
love
Mad
y'all.
Men
Have a great night.
out.
Bye.